I said before that politics wasn't a part of my mandate, but something must have changed. Many churches today are preaching messages that their congregations should stand in opposition to government rules that don't align with Christian values. The biggest of these fights is abortion rights. These messages stand in stark contrast to God giving us all free will. The greatest gift God gave us all is allowing us to choose to do right or wrong and to choose Jesus. And for all of you churchy folks out there that say when it comes to the abortion issue, it's about the unborn child, I will remind you of the story of David and Bathsheba. The child they conceived died because of their sin. Maybe, just maybe, God didn't want that soul born into that sinful situation. Listen, I believe that every person born in this earth is meant to be here. That's why Pharaoh couldn't kill baby Moses, nor could King Herod kill baby Jesus. And to take it a step further, 90% of the babies aborted in this country are conceived in sin. You rarely ever see a loving married couple aborting a child. As a church, we should focus on changing people's hearts instead of changing our nation's laws. In today's message, we'll look at how our political divide is being fueled by conservative Christians. America is the greatest country in the world, but if we don't get a handle on some of these fundamental problems, we could all be living in a place none of us want to be. This is the Matthew 7 Project, and this message is entitled, The Politics of Religion. Let me start by saying, if you're an American citizen, consider yourself blessed. Personal freedom and the chance of economic opportunity in this country is unequaled. I say that knowing full well that not every American is afforded the opportunity of the American dream, but most of us are. The United States is not very united right now, though. Many of the first Americans came to this country seeking religious freedom, which is ironic because much of the early economic success of this country came due to stripping human beings of their freedom. The early American colonies gained extreme wealth using slave labor to grow industries such as sugar and tobacco. That system is echoed today through illegal immigrant workers. Politicians on both sides understand the necessity for businesses. Republicans openly condemn illegal immigration, yet they secretly support businesses using cheap labor. Next time you go to a hotel room, ask one of the cleaning ladies for directions. It's a good chance she won't speak English. The one thing that binds all conservative Republicans is taxes. They believe firmly in cutting taxes. England's excessive taxes on early colonies led to the Revolutionary War and America's eventual independence. Could the political fights over taxes and government spending lead to a new government split? After all, some far-right conservatives are calling for a national divorce, which is absolutely crazy. I mean, imagine trying to divide an entire country. We've clearly lost our way. This country was founded on religion. The founding fathers never lost touch of their religious past. In fact, Washington, D.C. is filled with symbolic Messianic connections to God and the builders of the past. Today, America finds itself in this weird place because we still claim to be a Christian nation, but we don't always act like one. In many respects, we're a nation of contradiction and hypocrisy. For example, conservative Christians overwhelmingly supported Trump in the 2016 Republican primary over devout Christians like Mike Pence and Mike Huckabee, who is an ordained minister. You have to ask yourself, if you're truly about God's kingdom, why would you choose to vote for someone who openly bragged about grabbing women by the coochie over an ordained minister? And many of Trump's biggest supporters were Christian ministers. And they'll tell you it's all about his policies, but every Republican running for president that year basically supported the same policies. And Trump by far had the most questionable character of them all. The measure of a man is his character, and the measure of a country is its leadership. The Democratic Party is no better. I believe Democrats are intentionally ignoring the immigration crisis because ultimately, if they're able to dilute the Republican vote enough to flip Texas, there will never be another Republican president. That's just too many electoral votes to overcome if you add Texas to the already Democratic states of California and New York. Neither party seems to be able to balance a budget, and politicians on both sides are selling voters out for lobbyists and political donors. The Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. And most of our problems in the U.S. can be traced back to monetary greed. Texas is a perfect example of this. They boast the fact that they don't have state taxes, and yet they have some of the highest property taxes in the country. Nearly every highway in the Dallas-Fort Worth area is a toll road. Texans have to pay every time they take these highways, yet they pay for these roads already through gas taxes and registration fees. They also have some of the highest energy costs in the country because their energy grid is run by a for-profit company. The Democratic state of California is no better. They have some of the highest state taxes in the nation. And the cost of housing in the state of California is out of control, which is leading to a homelessness crisis. The number of homeless individuals living in just the city of Los Angeles is staggering, and it's putting a strain on all the social services there in the state. Now, let me give you another example. Conservative Christians overwhelmingly support Roe v. Wade, while at the same time choosing to ignore gun reform to save our children from mass shootings in schools. Why is that? Well, it's because gun lobbyists throw money at our politicians to restrict any kind of gun reform. Even something as simple as universal background checks can't get put to a vote, but it's supported by 90% of voters, regardless of party. The Affordable Care Act is another great example. It's supported by 65% of voters, yet universal health care is demonized by voters on both sides. No one wants universal health care because I guess we're afraid of the alternative. Yet every other civilized country has managed to provide universal health care for their citizens at a far cheaper cost than what we pay in this country. This is not a hard test to pass. Other countries are doing this successfully. Healthcare should not be tied to whether or not you have a job. It's causing all of our businesses to pay excessive amounts of money for each employee, which is being funneled back to taxpayers because it's written off as a business expense. Now we're stuck with insurance that doesn't pay for anything unless you get really sick or need surgery. As great as capitalism is, when capitalism is allowed to control industries that are essential, you get out of control costs. There's no reason a couple of Tylenol should cost $100 in a hospital when you can get an entire bottle at CVS for $20. There needs to be more regulation on every industry that provides essential services. Let me give you one more example. Republicans want to remove regulations in the oil and gas industry to free up these countries to produce more. Sounds like a great idea, right? We produce our own oil. We don't have to depend on countries like Russia and Saudi. What most people don't realize is our oil companies drill all over the world. In fact, the oil in this country is not their preferred crude of choice because it takes so much more work to refine it. Our politicians know this, yet they still push the narrative, drill, baby, drill. Some oil and gas companies made more profit in 2020, 2021 than any other year throughout their company's history. They could have easily chosen to take less profit and help to lower our gas prices, but they chose profit. Now, we can't blame all the pain at the pump on oil and gas companies because much of the pricing is controlled by gas station owners. The station near my house charges $2.49 for a gallon of gas, while a station on the other side of town charges $2.75. Now, while it doesn't seem like a big deal, that's like $10 on every $40 worth of gas you buy. And over the course of a year, that adds up to quite a bit of money. Another example of out-of-control costs is education. Republicans were furious when Biden tried to take taxpayer money and pay for other people's college education. And when you think about it, that is kind of messed up. I get it. But at the core of the problem, it costs way too much money for a college education in this country. And it wasn't always that way. The cost of a college education has increased by 300% in the last 50 years. Now, some of that is understandable with inflation, but there's been a 70% increase in just the last 20 years. That outpaces inflation by 20% over that same time period. Let me give you one last example. Ronald Reagan once said, if you want to prevent a war, you better be prepared to fight one. Our military budget is $800 billion a year, easily doubling the military budget of the next closest country. In fact, military spending in the U.S. is nearly 3 times that of the next closest country, China, who spends about $290 billion per year. And that doesn't include discretionary military spending. Think about that for a second. China managed to upgrade their entire naval fleet with a third of our military budget. Why is it that our ships cost more than theirs? I was in full agreement with Trump when he asked, why the heck do those F-22 fighter jets cost so much? But we never heard anything else about it, did we? And I get it. Defense contractors can't sell some of their equipment to other countries for the sake of national security, so it should cost a bit more. But at what point does the cost exceed what we can consider normal pricing? And all the money we spend around the world protecting other countries is just outlandish. I would love to protect the world from every bully, but it costs the U.S. too much, not just in monetary support, but also in reputation damage. There are a lot of countries that resent Americans for meddling in international affairs. And with all the other problems we have in this nation, I believe our time and money can be better spent focusing on other issues to protect and serve American citizens. We need to balance a budget. We need to lower our national debt. There's no way we can do that without fixing healthcare. 2/3 of all bankruptcies in this country are due to healthcare bills. TikTok is a major source of concern when it comes to information privacy. And there are over 150 million Americans on TikTok. If you work at a company that requires you to have a clearance, you know how serious that issue is. Our country loses billions of dollars each year to cyber attacks. We've lost 100,000 factories in this country because of outsourcing. Gun violence is out of control in our country. Social media platforms are all turning into a continuous stream of hatred, misinformation, and it's poisoning our kids. Last but not least, we have both an immigration and a humanitarian crisis at our southern border. Listen, we have to decide as a country who we are and who we're going to be. If we say we're going to be a Christian nation, we need to act like it. And right now, Lady Liberty looks more like the woman sitting on the scarlet beast in Revelation. The book of Revelation says, "And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold, precious stones, and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations, and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlot and of the abominations of the earth." This scripture could be referring to the United States. It goes on to say in verse 16, "And the 10 heads which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh and burn her with fire." Verse 18 says, "And the woman who you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth." So remember, the beast in Revelations is symbolic of world governments. It says that the woman reigns over the kings of the earth. When I read this, I immediately thought about the United States because we're the leaders of the free world. America is at the center of all world events. I want you to notice something else. It says the horns of the beast, the leaders of the other nations, will hate the harlot. To me, this is a clear symbol of how other countries see us. Many countries are trying to expose the U.S. and would love to destroy us. But right now, we're doing a pretty good job of destroying ourselves. I'm sure you've been around people thinking, boy, one day they're going to get theirs. Well, that's how other countries see us. And I think this is a clear message that America needs to address its own depravity. Recently, a 20-year-old letter from Osama bin Laden went viral on the internet because of the Israeli-Hamas war. It was so damning of the U.S. that most platforms have removed it as disinformation. Osama writes, "The American people are the ones who pay the taxes, which funds the planes that bomb us in Afghanistan, the tanks that strike and destroy our homes in Palestine, the armies who occupy our lands in the Arabian Gulf, and the fleets which ensure the blockades in Iraq." He says this is why the American people cannot be innocent of all the crimes committed in America and the Jews against us. What Osama bin Laden was saying is America and American people have to be held accountable for all the crimes the Jews committed against Arab Muslim nations. Young people all over the country are embracing this letter as truth, mainly because of our handling of the new Israeli-Hamas conflict. Israel has killed 10 times the number of Palestinians than the number of Israelis who died in this war. This is a definite sore spot among young college students in America. They are protesting on college campuses all over the country against this war. Yet many conservative right-leaning pastors are telling their congregations that we should stand in support of Israel no matter what. Why? Is that really what the Bible tells us? The promise says we should stand in support of God's people, not the country. And I, for one, can't say for sure that the Jews who are in Israel are the original Hebrews. In fact, Revelation tells us that could be the case. It says, I know the ones who call themselves Jews and who are not. Now, think about this for a second. 1,200 Jews were killed, but since then, the Israeli Defense Forces have killed nearly 12,000 Palestinians. And some reports say as many as 15,000. 10,000 of which were women and children. When you hear numbers like that, you have to question America's role in this conflict. Is that really an eye for an eye? What do you think? Did we really need to supply Israel with more weapons to fight Hamas, who was already undermanned and outgunned? In this war, it's clear. The Star of David is the giant, and this time he has more than stones. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. This is the Matthew 7 Project. Ask, seek, knock.